Corinth was one of the largest cities in ancient Greece, with a population of over 90,000 people. The city-state was a diverse international trading station. Paul is writing to Christians he has spent over 18 months living with. After he left, Paul receives word that the church is having problems, prompting him to write this epistle to the saints in Corinth, but also relevant to us. The Corinthian Christians were characterized by quarrels and a party spirit. Paul speaks to these damaged relationships, and he clearly says that divisions are contrary to Christ and to the gospel. Paul has diagnosed that one of the issues in the church comes from their pride and seeking status in the community. Religious posturing then and now occurs because people are trying to use their religious prominence to get community prominence. Paul reminds the church that those who are status seekers will never gain broad recognition and status from the unbelieving world of either the Jews or the Greeks. Greek society valued logic and science, and Jewish society wanted signs and miracles. Both rejected salvation through the cross. The idea of being saved through the work of a crucified man was to both foolish, and therefore joining that cult was not a status symbol. To those who trusted in the message of the cross and who are being saved by it, hearing this message brings the actual power of God into their life and into our life. Paul, quoting Isaiah 29, asserts that God has always worked in ways that are contrary to human wisdom. It is not logical to save the world with a humble man that submitted himself to capital punishment, but that was God's plan. He says to these status seekers, look around. Generally, those of high esteem in the world are absent from the church. And even when God may draw one of these so-called great people, he has to humble them first. To the Greek audience, they valued logic. Paul said God will use foolishness, illogicalness, to prove the ungodly to be foolish. Since the world has not come to know God through logic and wisdom, God will make himself known to them through means that seem to the world to be foolish. God has chosen the cross of Christ as a means whereby men may be saved from their sin, even though to the logical world, giving yourself as a sacrifice is foolish. The cross, capital punishment as salvation, cannot be explained in a logical manner. The Greeks wanted logic. Israel, they really wanted a Messiah that saved them from the Romans. They viewed these Christians as zealots that would soon fizzle out. These status seekers were trying to seek approval from a society that saw Jesus as a humble carpenter's son who died as a common criminal on a Roman cross. And to follow that kind of leader, to them, was foolish. But the foolishness of God is wiser and more powerful and more motivating than the greater wisdom of the world. Think about it. We're still studying that carpenter's son today. So to join the Christian church in order to improve your social status was futile and inconsistent with the gospel. As Paul has pointed out earlier, the church was devoid of those who held status in the secular world. And there's a reason for that. At this point, Christianity is viewed by society as a cult that has branched off from Judaism. Even worse than that, this new faith has been mongrelized by allowing Gentiles to join. Despite its diversity, the church is not made up of wise men, scribes, and debaters. Men of that elevated status would not associate with this ragtag group of illogical believers. In essence, God has chosen to save the poor, the weak, the despised, the nobodies. Paul states that God has chosen those at the lowest rung in society for a reason, not because these were all that would come to God. It was because God ordained them and chose them to come. God has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God is taking this approach, according to Paul, to ensure that all glory might come to him and not men. Changes that come from the seat of power are going to be credited to those in power. Here, God has changed the world and is changing the world using the powerless. People inspired by a crucified Son, espousing unconditional, selfless love as their only weapon. So if you want to boast, then boast of Christ. Jesus showed us in his teachings and in his life the real wisdom of God. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week. Bye.